Very good evening to all of you, and a warm welcome to this evening's event. We will be discussing about this book, Periyar. Before I introduce the speakers, I'd like to invite Mr. Dharanidharan, Executive Coordinator of the Dravidian Professional Forum, to talk about the DPF and its activities, and then I will take on from there.
Very soft.
Invite Dharanidharan.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone from London, and good evening to people in India. I would like to first thank Kanimozhi Madam for joining, and also my good friend Karthick for joining. And another big shout out to A.S. Panneerselvan sir and Sundar for religiously running the Reading Hub once every month. We've been having great speakers and great books that have been discussed. See, as PTR sir always says, why DPF? When DPF was founded, the primary idea was that ideas are the lifeblood of any movement. There have been seldom movements that has
our language
for more than 100 years. Can you hear me? There have been seldom movements that have lasted for more than 100 years, like the Justice Party movement, which became the Dravidian Kalaga movement, and now
I think Dharan is lost.
Get on with it.
This Readers Hub is a hybrid program. We usually have the program physically here, and people join us on Zoom. Sometimes the authors also join us on Zoom and talk about the subject. Dharan is joining us from somewhere in, I think, in England. Yes, Dharan, please go ahead.
can you hear me now? Oh, I'm extremely sorry. I got as I was speaking, I was removed out. So good afternoon from London, and good evening to folks in India, and good morning to who have joined from the US. Firstly, I would like to thank Kanimozhi Madam for joining. and my dear friend Karthick for willing to participate in this. And big shout out to AS Panneerselvan sir, Sundar and Pugal for managing the reading hub. So once the idea of starting DPF, as PTS sir says, is ideas are lifeblood of any organization. Seldom there have been movements that have lasted more than 100 years, like that of the Justice Party movement, and which became then Dravidian movement, and then now the DMK. And I think what we have achieved is also very seldom movements have achieved. And the purpose of also starting Reading Hub is to again rekindle intellectualism among young minds and every other person interested in the movement or in politics or in the polity. You know, Tamil Nadu is very unique. Tamil Nadu is very unique because Tamil Nadu is the only state in India that ranks really well in socio-economic metrics and as well as in industrial growth. For example, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh do well. They're not in the top 10. Maharashtra and Gujarat do comparable to Tamil Nadu industrial growth, but when it comes to socio-economic development, they like in Tamil Nadu or out of school. But in Gujarat, less than 50% of the girl children are in school. Even in industrial development, if you look, for example, Ahmedabad or Mumbai, if you look, sorry, Gujarat or Maharashtra, the growth is located only in the capital cities, maybe Ahmedabad, Mumbai, or probably Pune or Surat. But if you look at Tamil Nadu, the growth is spatially spread out everywhere. You have Chennai, you have South Sivagasi, in the west you have Tirupur, Coimbatore, Salem, and you have some industrial growth in Trichy as well. And again, if you look at the profile of entrepreneurs, people from all walks of life have become entrepreneurs. In Tamil Nadu has the highest number of Dalit entrepreneurs, highest number of OBC entrepreneurs. For example, 1 out of 4 Dalit entrepreneurs in India located in Tamil Nadu. And that is why the Gini index of Tamil Nadu is also one of the lowest in India. That is, Gini index meaning the concentration of wealth is the lowest. Also, if you look at socio-economic growth, Tamil Nadu has, for example, 4 doctors per 1,000, one of the highest, by far the highest in India and one of the highest in the world. Even the OECD average is 3.2. Only 4-5 countries such as Switzerland, Norway, Austria have more than 4 doctors per 1,000. If you look at Gujarat, there is about 0.5 doctors per 1,000 population. Jharkhand, 1 doctor per 8,000. And if you look at a graduate enrollment ratio of 52%, it's one of the highest in the world, by far the highest. It's nearly double of the Indian average. And also, if you look at the women labor force participation, Tamil Nadu is highest. The labor force participation of women in India is about 18% average. In Tamil Nadu, is about 28%. And the reason for the same, why we're able to achieve, is because very seldom movements have been able to mobilize people horizontally. What Periyar and successively Kalaignar and Anna were able to do was mobilize all the left out people under the common theme of dignity. Even there have been similar movements in the north, but they have not been able to mobilize all groups together. But here we are able to do. And I think that is the secret of our success. And I think Karthik has written a wonderful book in which he also explains about Periyar. And also there is a book in Dravidian years, it was mentioned how Periyar and the DMK helped the democratization of bureaucracy, which helped in delivering effective public services, providing proper healthcare and education, which again increase the aspiration of the left behind masses. With this, thank you, and I would like to thank once again
I think we lost
Kanimozhi
him.
ma'am and Karthik for joining.
Thank you, Dharanidharan. So this Readers Hub is a joint project of Dravidian Professionals Forum and Roja Muthaiah Research Library, and this is the 8th edition. We have eminent speakers today. I invite Madam Kanimozhi, Meena Dhanda, Professor Meena Dhanda, Dr. Karthick, and Mr. S. Panneerselvan, who will be deliberating the session today. Madam Kanimozhi doesn't need any introduction, but she's just for the sake of this audience, I must say that she's a poet, writer, thinker, and the political representative from the state of Tamil Nadu. She's been the MP in Rajya Sabha twice, and then now she's a member of parliament in the Lok Sabha. And yesterday was her father's birthday, and I know she's extremely busy, but despite that, she's here with us. Thank you very much, and I invite you. Then we have Professor Meena Dhanda, who is a professor of philosophy and cultural politics and leads a research group Language, Power and Society at University of Wolverhampton, UK. She's from Punjab, and she received the award of Commonwealth Scholarship for her doctoral work in philosophy at Balliol College, Oxford University. In 1992, she began teaching a broad range of areas in philosophy at Wolverhampton. From 2007, she's engaged in doing empirically informed social, moral, and political philosophy, and is internationally recognized as a leading academic in the development of diaspora Dalit studies. Her research focus is on understanding injustices, prejudices, and misrepresentations suffered by powerless groups, which she pursues through transdisciplinary studies, specifically connecting caste, class, gender, and race. Meena is interested in guiding research in social and political philosophy, ethics, cultural politics, identity, feminist philosophy, theories of anti-racism and anti-casteism. Then we have Karthick Manoharan, who is the author of this book, which we are going to deliberate. He's Mary Skłodowska Curie Fellow and is working on the political thought of Periyar E.V. Ramaswamy. His research on Periyar has been recognized as a novel and critical intervention in highlighting the thoughts of an important anti-caste thinker in the academia. He received his PhD from the University of Essex in 2015. The book is a thematic study of the work and ideas of Periyar. It analyzes Periyar's emancipatory, irreverent, and revolutionary critique of religion using the idea of political atheism. Drawing extensively from Periyar's own writings, contemporary accounts of Dravidian politics, the theory of anarchism, this groundbreaking study provides a new perspective on Periyar's engagement with religion, caste, and their collaborations with the state. Periyar is not just a new appraisal of Periyarism, but a reminder of its continuing significance in global conversations on justice, equality, and liberty. Then we have Mr. S. Panneerselvan, who is the head of the Center for Study in Public Sphere at the Roja Muthaiah Research Library, who will be moderating this discussion. I welcome all the four participants and speakers for this day. Before we start deliberating the book, I would like to present a small memento to the speakers. And that's a dancing girl from Mohenjo-daro. And it has been produced exactly in the similar manner that was produced some 4,000 years back using the lost wax process method. It was made in Odisha. Now we will also launch the book before we start the deliberation. before we go into the deliberations of the book, there is going to be a short film made by Vilasini Ramani. It's The Icon and the Iconoclast, a short film directed by Vilasini Ramani based on a conversation that reportedly happened between Periyar and Mahatma Gandhi in 1927. Over this conversation, Periyar and Mahatma Gandhi discussed their views on religion, where Gandhi, a believing Hindu, argued that it was possible to reform Hinduism from within. Periyar, an atheist, was skeptical of attempts to reform Hinduism. The film also shows how two thinkers with radically different views on religion could nevertheless have a respectful dialogue with each other. So we'll be watching the film now, and then we will start the deliberation on the book.
What do you think? Interesting things have been happening since you took the Congress. The Congress still commands great influence. It has resources and well-respected leaders like the Mahatma. More needs to be done in the Justice Party. Justice Party has done some good by introducing the order for communal representations. They also issued a challenge to Brahmin political domination. These are important. But they still have not worked more for the welfare of the majority of the non-Brahmins, especially the depressed classes. Now that they are in the opposition, maybe they will introspect.
The party leadership seems to think that replacing Brahmins in positions of power is enough.
The Brahmins have much power in their hands. We criticize them only because they are the greatest beneficiaries of power. However, the toiling non-Brahmin masses will not benefit by having non-Brahmin zamindars in places of power.
It appears you are moving closer to socialism.
You are the more learned man. You should tell. I only speak from what I observe. I think we must take the side of powerless over the powerful.
Big things are happening around the world. Citadels of power are being shaken. Capitalist countries thought that the Soviet Union would collapse, but it is still going strong.
I have been observing developments over there. Countries with progressive politics are also free from the grip of religion.
The state does not support religion in the Soviet Union. What's more, there are organizations that actively promote atheism.
Yes, you have told me about some atheist groups in Europe also.
Yes. You please sit down. I'll inform them.
Let us see. Let them finish. Manoharan, I want to visit these places. Meet those people, learn from them, and see if we can propagate those ideas in our society.
Yeah, you will face a lot of challenges here.
I'm going to face my biggest challenge now. Hinduism must go.
Why?
Because there is no such religion.
There is.
Brahmins have propagated this idea and have duped people.
Aren't all religions like that?
Not so. Other religions have proof for their history and their religious figures. And their ideas are generally accepted by their followers.
But aren't there such things in Hinduism?
What is that? One is a Brahmin, one is a Shudra, another is a Panchama. Apart from these divisions, is there a common source or a common idea? Apart from the social belief that the Brahmin is high and Shudra and Panchama are low, what else is there?
Well, at least there appears to be this idea.
But what is the use of this? According to it, Brahmins are higher, while you and I are lower.
You are in error. In the Varnashrama Dharma, there are no high and low castes.
You say this, but it does not work that way.
It can be made to work that way.
As long as there is Hinduism, that will not happen.
It can be done only through Hinduism.
Then what do we do with the religious texts that are proof of the divide between Brahman and Shudra?
Well, you yourself claim that there is no proof for a Hindu religion.
Yes, I say that there is no religion and there is no specific proof for the same. But those people who accept the religion will also have to accept the proof that comes along.
We can accept a religion and develop our own arguments.
That is not possible. If we accept a religion as valid, you cannot change anything.
What you say is applicable for other religions, not for Hinduism. Once we accept the religion, we can make changes in its name. None will question you.
How can you say this? Who will agree? Wouldn't you need to provide a basis for all this?
What you say sounds right. That is, there is no religion called Hindu religion. Fair enough, I agree. I also agree that it does not have a well-defined set of ideas. But that is exactly we as Hindus have the liberty to make our own ideals. Today in this country, why, in the world itself, the Hindu religion can be used to bring people to the right path. Other religions cannot, because other religions have historical proof and concrete ideas. Those who interfere with that will be opposed. What Christ said and what the Bible says he said, that is the only way for Christians to act. Likewise, what the Prophet Muhammad said and what the Quran says, that is the only way for Muslims to act. Different interpretations will be seen as blasphemy. Those with different opinions can state them only from the outside. If they try to do so from the inside, it will not be permitted. This is the nature of the true religions. Since Hinduism is not such a religion, anyone can become a saint here and say anything. That is how many great men and saints of Hinduism were able to say what they said. Thus, we too can stay within Hinduism and bring about several reforms.
I'm sorry. That cannot be done.
Why?
The selfish group in Hinduism will not allow this.
Why do you say that? Do not the Hindus agree when we say that there is no untouchability in Hinduism?
Agreeing is one thing and practicing is another.
I practice it. Would you not agree that there has been a substantial change in the past 4-5 years?
I understand what you're saying. But there is no change at a fundamental level. Due to your public influence and because they seek to make use of you, they act as though they agree with you and you believe them.
Who are these actors?
Why? The Brahmins.
All the Brahmins?
Yes. Why? All the Brahmins who are around you.
Don't you believe a single Brahmin?
I find it difficult.
Don't you even believe Rajagopalacharya?
He is a good man, an honest man, but he is honest in pursuing the interests of his class, ready to sacrifice for the same and honest in that pursuit. But I am unable to hand over the interests of my class to him without suspicion.
That is surprising. Is it your opinion that there is no honest Brahmin in the world?
I don't know, but I don't find any.
Please don't say that. I have seen a Brahmin. Without doubt, I consider him a good Brahmin. Do you know who that is? Gopal Krishna Gokhale.
If even a Mahatma like you could find only one good Brahmin in this wide world, How can an ordinary sinner like me find any?
The world is controlled by the intelligentsia. Brahmins are the learned class. They will always thus command power. There is no point in criticizing them. Rather, others should reach their level.
Other religions are not like that. It is only in Hinduism that an exclusive group like Brahmins form the intelligentsia. Among others, 90 out of 100 are illiterate or innocent. In a society in which a particular section of people form the intelligentsia, isn't that religion detrimental to the interests of other castes other than the privileged one? That is why I have been saying that such a religion is false, harmful to others and must go.
Can I assume that your position is that both Hinduism and the Brahmins should go?
If Hinduism, this false religion, goes, there will be no Brahmins. It is because of the Hindu religions Brahmins are there and you and I become Shudras. And all the power rests in the hands of the Brahmins, I would say.
That is not so. Do they not listen to me? By being within the Hindu religion and acting in its name, we can still remove its negative aspects that you have pointed out.
It is my humble opinion that you will not be able to do this. And even if you do, after your time, some other great person like you might emerge and undo all your work.
How?
As you said earlier, anything can be said in the name of Hindu religion to convince people. Similarly, some great man might emerge in the future and do anything in the name of Hinduism.
I don't think that change might be easily possible in the future.
Forgive me for saying this, but within this Hindu religion, for even a Mahatma like you, it will not be possible to bring about a permanent change. The Brahmins will not allow you to go to that extent. And if they feel that your stand affects their interests, they'll start opposing you. So far, no great man has been able to bring about a substantial change here. And if anyone does try, the Brahmins will not spare them.
You have a wrong opinion about the Brahmins. Your position is clear to me. I think we have not arrived at any conclusive agreement in our conversation. However, let us meet again 2-3 times. Later we can decide on what we can do together.
வணக்கம் ஐயா.
Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated by a Hindu nationalist Brahmin on the 30th January 1948.
Periyar continued his non-violent struggle against Brahmanism until his demise on 24th December 1973.
Good evening, friends. Periyar is studying political atheism. It's an interesting book because it looks at Periyar's atheism, not from a theological point of view, but from an idea of change. If you want to look at a political idea as an idea of change, first thing is you move away from theology. And so the central idea of this book is looking at Periyar's atheism as a political atheism and not as a theological argument. That makes it interesting. In 2017, we had this 100 years of Dravidian movement conference. And in the 100 years of Dravidian movement conference, Karthick came up with this idea of looking at Periyar's idea, and he wanted to use some traditions from anarchism to understand Periyar. And later he discovered that anarchism is not enough to understand Periyar's role. Periyar's role as much more than that. Therefore, actually, we can see a departure from what he presented in 2017 to this book, because there is an amount of arguments which have been fleshed out far more clearly in this book. Therefore, before I get into this book, I would like to ask you, because how did, at Wolverhampton, you came up with this idea of looking at caste as a category and investing so much of scholarship to understand caste as a issue?
Thank you so much, Panneerselvan. My own story is a different one and quite long. And for people who are interested, there's a long interview published recently, which starts from the beginning of how I got into the last question. Honestly, I do not want to talk about myself today. I want to talk about my dear Karthick and the book. So I will say that very briefly, my interest in caste was because I found that Western political philosophy did not explain or did not have the conceptual apparatus to explain the change from being an untouchable to becoming a Dalit. Political change from being born an untouchable to becoming a Dalit. So my PhD was about that, or at least it had that as a simple example. And at that point of time, this is a long time ago, I did not even have access to PRM writing, which I got on paper. And I certainly knew nothing about Periyar, except I knew that one of the hostels in JNU is called Periyar. I knew that. That was the only time that I'd heard the word Periyar. It was studied in JNU. I personally am totally born and brought up in Punjab. I have never had any education in any of the big cities in India. No Delhi, no Bombay, no Calcutta. So quite a regional person. And I went straight from Chandigarh to Oxford University. So I also realized, to my utter horror, that amongst my students in University of Wolverhampton, there was an experience of caste prejudice. They have felt caste prejudice, which came as a real shock to me, that I expected for people living so far away from the homeland of caste, they would have left it all behind. And gradually in 2007-8, I started doing more empirical work to find out what this was, and fortunately also got some funding to follow some research projects. And then the high point was in 2013-14, because there was a change coming in the Equality Act in UK, and there was a concerted effort to add caste to the Equality Act. I became quite involved in that. And the Equality and Human Rights Commission gave us some funding to lead a project on caste in Britain, in which they would have anthropologists, lawyers, historians, lots of people involved. I led that project, and we wrote 2 reports, which if people are interested, they can see. So that was that about me. I don't want to say any more. And that process of adding caste to the Equality Act is still hanging in the balance because there was a lot of opposition from upper caste Hindu and some state groups, and uh, the word caste, the mention of the word caste was resisted, and people did not want, through lobbying through parliament, people did not want it to be added. So that battle is still on. And those of you who follow will know that similar attempts are happening in Australia, in the USA, and other places. So the opportunity to work with Karthick came in 2019. I edited a special issue of a journal called Religions on Dalits and Religion, and Karthick contributed a very nice article, which is actually, I would say, the backbone of this book. And that article was on Periyar and religion. At the same time, I also got to know Karthick's book, which was based on his PhD on Transformer, Identity and Resistance. I very much like that book. I'm a big fan of myself. So I found here somebody who's making a very interesting comparison and using also Fanon to have a critical look at Periyar. That was, for me, a very refreshing thing, because usually when people are talking about our own thinkers, we are very defensive about them and do not open them to criticism. And I found that Karthick has done that. And that's why then in 2019, we made a big funding bid to the European Commission for a EU Horizon 2020 project on Periyar, which we call Freedom from Caste, the political thought of Periyar Ramaswamy in a global context. And we did fantastically well. We got a fantastic score, 98.8% score. And we got this project. We did Karthick then is as Mary Skłodowska-Curie Fellow to the University of Maharashtra. So from the time that project started in 2020 September till April, when we had to discuss with you, in this period there have been at least 16 different events connected one way or another with the project and with area. And so there have been seminars which Karthick has presented, some we have jointly presented, or some in which either of us have presented in Cambridge, in Oxford, in UCL, in LSE, in Chicago, in all online. So in the COVID conditions, with restricted travel, otherwise we would have gone to Harvard and we would have gone to many other places. We couldn't go because of COVID, but we still did many events. Several talks, and some of them have got published as articles. So there were two high points in our project. One was a big conference we did in October 2021, which was on anti-caste thought, where we tried to link Periyar's thought to other anti-caste thinkers. So there was a call for papers, and many young people contributed. So we had this 2-day conference, which was a very successful conference. And out of that, then we edited a special issue of the journal Caste. J-Cast is called, which is the chief editors are Sukhadio Thorat and Lawrence Hyman. And Karthick and I were guest editors for that special issue, which has been published in April this year. It's in open access, so I invite you all to download it and read the articles in it. The second high point was the British. It's called DHF, which is Being Human Festival. It's the largest humanities festival that takes place every year. It's funded by the British Academy and the HRC. It's run from London, and we organized an event. This film, which you just saw, The Icon and the Iconoclast, was premiered at that festival. And we had a book discussion. Introduced, the discussion following up from the film with all the actors. I was hoping I would meet some of them here, but in person. It was absolutely fascinating to talk to them about the making of the film and what they experienced as a result. I think it's recorded and it's available again for public viewing. Those of you who are interested in following the project, I would say there is a blog called the Periyar Project. which links everything that we do, including videos of the conference and links to any comments and regular writings that Karthick puts on that sort. And what we continue was, yeah, yeah. So the way in which Periyar has been introduced now to the global public is one I have just said through all these seminars. The other is to not just present him as a political thinker, but to introduce him to people who are doing philosophy, people who are doing history and politics. So Karthik has also given some lectures in the University of Wolverhampton to classes in 3 or 4 different modules. So that's the first time that people are hearing about Periyar. And the other is, of course, that through writing, say I give you an example. In University of Nottingham, we did a webinar where Karthick spoke on Periyar's political atheism, and this was a very research-led group of philosophers. And one of the philosophers who was present in Kid, and Karthick, I have the reference to his work in this, really posed a very challenging question. Karthick was saying that between Islam and Buddhism, Periyar preferred Buddhism, even though he had good things to say about Islam, but he actually supported Buddhism more. And the challenge came that, don't you think that Buddhism is a quietist philosophy? How possibly can you make it the basis of bringing about political change? And we had a fascinating discussion. Of course, this Ian kid hadn't heard about Ambedkar's Ramayana Buddhism. He hadn't. He knew what he studied in the text there. Ambedkar isn't a part of the curriculum or the new people do religious thought on Buddhism. And so it was that through that exchange, some new lines of inquiry opened as to how what we take as the history of Indian thought is not necessarily the whole truth, because what is taught in curricula about Indian thought is limited by the selections that people make. Everybody has their own understanding of what is Indian thought, and a lot gets missed. So we are hoping that through this project, whenever people talk about social change and many other issues, for example, freedom of speech, they will also take the example of Periyar. In my view, of course, many of the things he said in his time would be almost impossible to say today. And even as I sit here and speak, I mean, I half imagine that there could be somebody just coming in here and telling us, you can't talk the way you're talking. What is in this book is not allowed. I am quite mindful of the fact that today academic freedom is severely limited. So I am so proud that Karthick has had the courage to write as explicitly and as openly and also critically about Periyar in this book. Many of the things that are quoted from Periyar, quote unquote, are very dangerous. And so I think, shall I stop here? I think that we will have a chance to come back in later. So my heartiest congratulations to Karthick, and thank you to all of you who come here and support his work. I'm sure he'll go on to do many more writings. And this is a short book. I'm sure there's going to be more coming from the same place. Thank you.
Karthick. Starting from the non-Brahmin manifesto, there are so many clear markers of the self-respect movement. Among all these markers, what propelled you to select Periyar?
I even prior to the non-Brahmin manifesto, modern Tamil Nadu particularly has had a very strong legacy of anti-caste thinking, both in the spiritual domain as well as in the secular domain. In the spiritual domains, it could be people like Ramalinga Vallalar, or in the secular domains, it could be people like Atipakam Venkatachalam Nayak. All of these people laid the sort of foundation, the ideological foundation that went into the making of the non-Brahmin movement in 1917. But what attracted me specifically about Periyar is, in one sense, he represents a continuity from the past, but he also represents a radical break from it, right? The sort of intervention which Periyar makes in his lifetime makes him a sort of a creator of an event of historical significance. So what I mean by event over here is not just an instance or a moment in history, but I take a sort of a more philosophical approach that event is something which changes the manner in which we view the relationship to society, in fact, the very nature of society itself. So insofar as that is concerned, I think that Periyar was an event. So what was significant about the Periyar event, as such I would say, is his not just his criticisms or rejection of religion, but more importantly, the manner in which he was able to link religion with social and political power and offer a comprehensive critique of all of these. So there is actually no aspect of society, there is no aspect of social hierarchy which Periyar leaves untouched. So the sort of material which he produces can be used for practically any sort of egalitarian project. Now, as you said in the start, I initiated this research on Periyar with the comparison with anarchism, right? Because I feel that there is a lot in Periyar which overlaps with the sort of libertarian thinking in anarchism, which centralizes or prioritizes the freedom of the individual and social group. But having said that, Periyar also offers himself as a sort of a body of thought which can be combined with any other egalitarian body of thought. So we could have a Periyarist feminism, we could have a Periyarist Marxism, we could have a Periyarist post-Marxism, we could have a Periyarist idea of LGBTQ rights, and so on and so forth. So this multidimensionality of Periyar attracted me very greatly. And the other thing I would say about Periyar is that to some extent, I would say that Periyar was too hot to handle, right? As in the sort of things which he said were not accepted by the majority of the society, even though they were, respected him, even though they were his followers. It's not easy for everyone to accept everything which Periyar says. For instance, someone might accept Periyar's atheism, but not necessarily his writings on gender justice. Someone might accept his writings on annihilation of caste, but not so much his views on marriage, for instance. Right? So, in that sense, Tamil society has sort of had a very dialogical relationship with Periyar himself. In this sort of a scenario, I find the role played by the Dravidian electoral party, especially the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, in creating a sort of a perfect dialectical sort of relationship between Periyar, the party, and society. So this is something I've briefly touched upon in my book over here, but hopefully this is an area I want to expand upon in future, for which again, I think Periyar's thoughts are set.
One of the key questions is idea of an egalitarian imagination comes from respecting dignity and shunning humiliation. They reduce the entire self-respect movement into one line. The idea of self-respect movement is to shun humiliation and respect dignity. And for that, religion was seen as a major stumbling block. And now, how did you arrive at this term called political atheism to understand that into it?
So this is something I wanted to, a concept which I wanted to elaborate upon, mainly because Periyar is generally being seen as a sort of a crude atheist by people who perhaps deliberately spread misconceptions about Periyar that he was only concerned about the rejection of religion. But what I mean by political atheism is that it is fundamentally a challenge to political theology. Now, political theology is a concept I take from the German theorist Carl Schmitt. So, Carl Schmitt says that political theology is a secularized theological concept, by which he means that the modern state, in a sense, thinks like religion, as a very strong idea of good and evil, friend and enemy. We can see how that operates in many countries in South Asia. The sense of we and they, the sense of friend and enemy, the sense of good and evil. What political atheism does, especially what political atheism of Periyar does, is it challenges this binary. It challenges the secularized theological concept, and it does not stop with the critique of religion. It also extends the critique to a critique of state, status politics, and the manner in which both state and religious power interlink and overlap. So, in a sense, political atheism is a sort of a perspective that can contribute to the strengthening of secularism in this country, which I think is particularly a significant concept to expand upon.
We would like to hear from you because you are a person who have imbibed this ideology and you have also created a practice. So what are the major difficulties in converting such a difficult idea into practice? What are the major roadblocks we encounter?
I think the major roadblock is us. Like we were also discussing, I think we are in a defense. We want to defend. We do not want to state who we are. We try to give excuse. We try to justify. I think that is the major roadblock, and I would hope you would answer this. In politics, I don't think, I mean, seeing from my father's life, I don't think he compromised or he believed in compromising, and I don't think the electoral politics rejected him. I mean, he has been able to come back to power, again and again and again, and he did not mince his words, and so I think we have to, have that clarity. That people of Tamil Nadu and I think anywhere, people are prepared to listen to reason and people are open to scientific temper. It is just that we believe that, people, Periyar never gave up hope. But unfortunately, I think the biggest hurdle we are facing today is that all of us are giving up hope and we think there will not be a change. So that is, and we start taking a step back from what we believe in and what we stand for. I think it's not the time to do that. I think it is a time to go ahead and, say what you believe in and stand for what you believe in. And if we do not do that, I think we'll be worse sinners than, the ones who propagate hate in the name of religion. Silence, I think, is a bigger crime than actually propagating hate in the name of caste or religion or anything else. I think so. That is the biggest stumbling block I see. But I'd like to ask you. I think you even in the first few pages in your you started your book saying that we have Periyar statues all over, and we also have so many temples and mosques and churches And slowly we see that, this religious fervor and of course like people going into defending and apart from that, you can see casteism, the pride in caste and films and art and different walks of life coming up and young people getting into that. So how do you look at Periyar's works, Periyar, his ideology and the Dravidian movement and this revival which we are seeing, or do you look at it as things which we thought we have come past getting revived, or how do you look at it?
Thank you, ma'am. So, in a sense, I would say that there is indeed a huge revival of interest in Periyar's thoughts in Tamil Nadu, in India, and abroad. And I would give two key reasons for that. In fact, in my note, I have mentioned a thanks to the Honorable Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, and his rule has greatly revived an interest in Periyar and in Dravidian politics. The other person whom I have not thanked in this note, but perhaps I should use the opportunity to thank now, is the Honorable Prime Minister of India. So, thanks to him again, yes, thanks to him again, people have realized how important the Dravidian model is and how important the sort of vision of leaders like Periyar, Anna, Kalaignar, and our Chief Minister Stalin. So on that, I just want to give two examples. One is a political example and another is a sort of a personal example on the sort of impact which Periyar has created in shaping the modern Tamil or the Dravidian mentality, as we would like to call it. Now, in countries, in states across India, I don't think it would be possible for any member of a religious minority to stand for elections or even hope for winning an election in towns or cities which are considered as temple towns or holy places. But in the 2019 General Assembly election, a Muslim candidate, Nawaz Khani from the Indian Union Muslim League, won from one of the holiest places for the Hindus, Rameshwar. He won with a thumping majority, defeating the BJP's candidate. And when some people ask me what is the effect of Periyar's thought, what is the political impact of the Dravidian model, this is the example I usually give in classes or in lectures and seminars. So now that is a political example. As a personal example, there a person who I admire much is here in the audience, my grandmother. She is a very religious person. So she has a vibhuti on her head and she worships 3 times a day and very, very pious, goes to temple and all that. But I remember many years back, I was just having a conversation with my grandfather where I, just to provoke him, I was, telling that I don't agree with Kalaignar, I don't agree with Anna, I don't like Periyar and all that. And my grandmother got angry and told me to get out of the. Okay? So this is a sort of mentality which many people in Tamil Nadu easily manage to coexist with. As in, we can be religious in private and we can support someone like Periyar, Anna or Kalaignar in public. We can be the devotees of Lord Ram or Lord Shiva, but when Kalaignar asks which engineering college did Rama studied in, we can still cheer for that. This sort of this habiting between private spirituality and public secularism is perhaps the greatest contribution of a Dravidian leaders. I think the Hindu right will have an extraordinarily hard time trying to shake this. So, insofar as that is concerned, I am confident. But now, as you rightly said, we need to not just be content with having this, perspective in our state alone. We need to get it across India.
Can I?
Yes, please.
I think maybe I heard the question differently. What you asked us. I heard you asking that given that there is a great surge now of caste pride in films, So that is a revival. In the face of that, right? What can we do with Periyar? And that's what I heard you say. It wasn't Karthick took it as the revival of interest in Periyar, but I took it as what is Periyar's response to the revival of caste which is taking place around us now. That's how I heard it. So I think that is a very, very interesting, good question. Because for the first time, you find that people have become somehow, under this present regime, I would say, emboldened to explicitly state things which in the past they were afraid of stating. So it's not that people had stopped believing in caste. People always believed in caste in their personal lives. They carried on following endogamy, marrying people in their own caste, and across the spectrum, left, right, and center, everybody. I once did a study in Punjab and Haryana High Court on runaway marriages, the paper published in the EPW, and I tried to estimate how many people really do marry across caste. These are couples who go to the court for protection. And it's a very small percentage of the total population. And national statistics tell you maybe 5%. A very small percentage of people actually marry outside caste. So I don't know what are the figures specifically for Tamil Nadu and what has been the effect of the self-respect movement in Tamil Nadu. So maybe there are some differences, but by and large, people have followed caste privately. But in the past, I think there was something of a camouflage, or at least people didn't come out openly and say that this is what I believe in. But it is happening now. It is happening now, and I think that is really a very interesting thing. But I would there are two ways of looking at it. You can look at it with horror and think of it as this is a resurgence, something growing. But you can also think of it as now it's like, when you have a disease and it's underlying, and I call casteism a disease, absolutely. So you have an underlying disease, you have no symptoms. You're still dying of the disease, but you don't have no symptoms. Now the symptoms are there. You can see these spots coming out. You can see the evidence of the disease which has always been there. So now that the symptoms are out, I think it is in one sense easier to address. We know the nature of the disease better than we did before, because we know precisely where it is coming out, what feeds it, what are the conditions in which this disease increases, and what kind of environmental change might actually squash it. So I'm not pessimistic. I think I expressed fear, and I won't hide it. I am afraid. I've always been afraid of this, what is happening. There is fear. Friends of mine are in jail. I am really afraid. But I think fear is one thing, but that doesn't stop me from either speaking here or expressing what I say. One has to be realistic about the world in which one is living. But I am also thinking that now really is the time to try and understand as clearly, as boldly, as comprehensively as we can, what is the nature of this disease, which is casteism. And then really we have to find a way of building the basis of solidarity. And here I have a slight problem with respect to Periyar, which is that I want to know from Periyarists and followers, and I would say to Karthik also, I had this conversation with the taxi driver who brought me to this venue, and he made also the same point, that why is Periyar's influence so confined only to this region? What can possibly be done? I mean, unlike, for example, Ambedkar, maybe Ambedkar influence is also in some places it is just superficial, because by making a statue of Ambedkar doesn't mean that Ambedkar has influence, but nonetheless, he has a much wider acceptance. Whereas Periyar is very regionally located, and whilst people in Tamil Nadu are very, very influenced, and like you gave the example of your grandmother, who I'm waiting to meet, but that influence of Periyar is still very regional. And what can be done? In our project, in taking Periyar to the global audience, we have tried to make things, but in very abstract way. Like I give you the example of Buddhism, which can be read differently, or in the question of, as Karthick is doing, about trying to understand, and when you study anarchism, maybe you can take an example. But these are all abstract conceptual matters. So far, not connected to politics. Right? So on Ambedkar, I am trying to connect anti-casteism to anti-racism, which is a very political move, trying to see how we might get together with anti-racist activists and make them take up anti-casteism as an agenda. But here, I don't know how. I mean, it would be a big learning experience for me to see what is the way to think of the potency of Periyar's thought that will take him out of this region and check up what people are thinking elsewhere. So the question of this divide, it bothers me. How can somebody who has said things so provocative and disturbing not make a difference elsewhere? So that's my question to all of you.
One of the things what we discovered is this vast knowledge which was generated from 1905 onward, and in 1917 the non-Brahmin manifesto was published in Tamil. And this exhaustive knowledge system which is in Tamil needs to be brought out in other languages. For instance, there's a huge debate between the Dravidian movement's understanding of handloom versus the nationalist movement idea of qadar. The Dravidian movement says that handloom is an idea where the fundamental unit is society, whereas in handloom and qadar, the fundamental unit is individual. And the moment you're having society as a unit, there is an interdependence, and hence it is a far more important idea. And that's how this entire cooperative societies and cooperative associations came about in Tamil Nadu. That part, that entire debate between handloom versus qadar has not been properly translated. The second issue is between 1942 to 1950, the discussion between Annadurai and Periyar on what constitutes a nationality or what constitutes citizenship. It's a very fine debate. And again, it's in Tamil. Therefore, it's been seen as a debate between Kanji and Vidudalai, or it's been seen as a debate between Periyar and Anna. But it's much more than that. It's about a country which was about to emerge. And there is a debate about what is citizenship. And in that, there is an amount of nuances which has come out. I think it's our duty to translate it and bring it out in English. And the next aspect is the 1952 election. When India went for its first general election, the Dravidian movement did not contest the election, but it took a decision to support people who are willing to endorse few ideas, and it supported that election. In that sense, here is a movement which tries to understand how popular democracy is going to work, and that the entire debate to get prepared for a popular democracy. And these issues, I think, as you said rightly, this knowledge is in Tamil and it has to be translated and we have to bring it out. It needs to come out as an annotated text, because some of these texts also have a particular context. So below the context that may not be quickly understandable. But given the fact that we are running out of time and we also would like to hear Kanimozhi's keynote address, I would like to have questions from the audience to both Karthick and Meena before we do the keynote address. Okay, brief questions according to Karthick. Please identify yourself.
Yeah, my name is Gautam, and First of all, thank you for writing this fabulous and insightful book. I have two questions to ask. One is, can we say Anna's secular doctrines like ஒன்றே குலம் ஒருவரே தேவன் and பிள்ளையாரையும் முளைக்க மாட்டேன் பிள்ளையாருக்கு தேங்காயும் முளைக்க மாட்டேன் as a synthesis of Periyar's political atheism and the Saivite political theology? And I think here Anna, I emphasize both DMK and Anna. So can we also say this synthesis made religion a private thing and politics a secular one? And the second question is, by claiming Periyar as an anti-philosopher, we can are you saying he's not a philosopher, or we can agree Periyar as a philosopher? These are the two questions. Thank you.
Congratulations, Karthick, for bringing out a book as a publisher. Too glad to see one more book on Periyar. In fact, we brought out the first book in English way back in 1990, written by my father on Periyar. I'm so happy that thanks to like you have brought it. My question to you is, when Ambedkar is accepted, Ambedkar is accepted even by Hindutva and started absolving, but the very mention of Periyar, the name, annoys and irritates people everywhere. What is your perspective on that? How do you look?
Thanks so much for the book and wonderful discussion. So I think my question was to just carry from what Meena has said, is that about geographical location restriction of Periyar. I mean, does one see Periyar as being relevant to even global north, politics for global north? I mean, and especially I'm asking this because I remember asking from my friends in Germany, would you see it possible for an iconoclastic figure, like who's basically an outright atheist and a radical atheist, to have a significant political influence? Or do you see a party which is actually headed by an iconoclastic anti-religious figure actually winning elections? Or can you actually put outside a church of a figure, a photograph of a figure like that? And the answer to all the questions were no. So is it someone like Periyar, even let's say relevant to a place like Germany or UK or US, where you don't have this kind of progressive political tradition?
To the question on why Ambedkar is more acceptable than Periyar, or why Periyar creates more fear than Ambedkar, is mainly because, as I tried to say in this book, Periyar is not just criticizing religion, he is also criticizing the nation state a lot. Right? That's sort of an explicit criticism of the nation state does not come from any other thinker who is Periyar's contemporary, including Dr. Ambedkar. And also, Periyar is, what shall I say, many of the things which Periyar says is not what we say bounded by any sort of morality, whether it is scriptural morality or a constitutional morality. So what he says is opposed to any and all forms of authority. So this makes him quite a hot figure to handle by any person who believes in authority of any sort. So I guess that makes him a very, very, what shall I say, including for supporters of Periyar like us, right? It is really hard for us to handle him in his entirety. And then regarding whether Anna's political thought, there's actually a good research which should happen on this. That you know, where does Anna draw his strengths and influences from? Definitely, Periyar's thought plays a crucial part to it. But there are some scholars who would argue that there is also a Saivite element in Anna's thought. But I wouldn't want to overemphasize the Saivite dimension in it per se. But then again, like I said, as an intellectual historian, as a person who deals with intellectual history a lot, I would prefer to go through the volumes of Anna which have just been published recently in detail before making any informed comment on this. This is just a very general approach. Regarding Periyar's influence in outside India. So I mean, since you brought about Germany, I could tell you. I mean, there's this very interesting article by A.R. Venkatajalapati on Periyar's European travel, on Soviet travel particularly, but where he also talks about Periyar's trip to Europe. Right. So Periyar goes over there and he's completely fascinated by the sort of atheist organizations which existed in these countries. But at the same time, reminiscing about his travels in Europe, he also notes that there is a lot of difference between the bourgeois atheists and the proletarian atheists. And he says that his line is on the with the proletarian atheists. Right. So in Germany, when he visits Germany, he also took part in the nudist movement. Right. I mean, that's like unimaginable for Western leaders itself. So yeah. So in a sense, I would say that the sort of iconoclasm which Periyar represented, it does make new waves when we try to place him in conversation with radical thinkers across the world. So I think these are new combinations which many of us should keep trying about. That without having any sort of dogmatic preference, these are new theoretical explorations that we should try out, I would think. Yeah.
I'll take 3 more questions before we ask.
Can I just say
Yes, please.
Yeah, just I didn't hear the question very well, but I want to make a very, very small remark about comparison. I have always wanted to build bridges. And one other thing which disturbs me is that the silos within which people work, politically as well as in academic work. So there are Periyarists, there are Ambedkarites, and I think it is terribly unfortunate that people who should be reading both, following both, understanding both, criticizing both are not doing that. And so I would never engage in comparison between people like that. I wouldn't say who is better, Ambedkar or Periyar. I would never ask. It's for me, to put it very grossly, is like saying which is better, melon or mango. Would you do that? I wouldn't do that. They're fruit, they're lovely, they're both nice. Some people like mangoes, some like melons. But I think it's just to say that there is really no point in making those sorts of judgments. Those sorts of judgments do not advance anything. They don't advance our understanding. They don't advance our capacity to act politically. If anything, they disturb possibilities of solidarity. I think we should stay far away from making those judgments. The more you go deeply into anybody's thought. So I would say, even to what Karthick said, I mean, Ambedkar has written about nationalism too. And I would recommend one small text that Anand Teltunde put together, which is on what Ambedkar said about Muslims. In that, there is also a section about what he said about nationalism. And it's really interesting. So there are little lesser known things that are there that people have written. And instead of comparing, I think we should just divide the intellectual labor between us. Unfortunately, because of not knowing Tamil, I am unable to read Periyar in the original. So I have to rely on him. Fortunately, because I did get an education in English, I'm able to read a lot of Ambedkar because a lot of his writing is in English. So this is an intellectual division of labor between us, a necessary division of labor. But I would love for there to be translations, as you suggested, Panneerselvan. Extremely important that there are vast translations as much as possible, certainly in English, in other languages if possible, so that people can really engage with the thought.
We'll take Vijay Shankar.
It's not a question, it's an observation from what Adam said. Ambedkar and Periyar, in my view, I think it is got only a thinking aloud provoked by what he said just now. Ambedkar, Periyar, my main problem, as Paneer mentioned, she mentioned, is that translations, not very good translation. And there is another angle to it. Periyar's name is suppressed by the intelligentsia not just suppressed, it has been reduced. He has been reduced to just an atheist, which is not a very. That's why he's not very popular. I mean, popular level, Periyar, when you talk about Periyar, in Tamil they say, our kadavulukku edhiranavar, anti-God. He's been reduced. He's much more than that. Second aspect, why Ambedkar is not known all over the world or all over India, not Periyar. Periyar basically was a propagandist who was always talking to the people at the lowest. Any conversation, any speech, any writing, you look at Periyar's writing. I have done a lot of work on that. Look, he is always addressing the people on the ground. He wants to convince them. He wants to make it what they call national popular, just consciousness, or a Gramscian theory of hegemony. He is trying to do it. In the case of Ambedkar, he did that. But Ambedkar was much more than that, in the sense that he was not just a propagandist who operated in a particular area. He was also part of the Constituent Assembly. He studied abroad. So this exposure level was much, much higher. He is known to the world as a Constituent Assembly member. But again, Periyar, when it comes to Periyar, as I said, one is we don't have even people who should have done a lot of research, have done a lot of translation, a proper critique of Periyar. We are just trying to do it. I am trying to do it. You have done it. I'm very happy about it. But that has not been done. The other part is there is a deliberate attempt and success in that attempt to suppress him and reduce him to an atheist. He's much more than that. I think this is my observation. It's not a question.
Good evening. Thank you very much for writing this book. Hope to read it soon. My question is, I think something the panelists also raised. This is about the resurgence of caste pride that we see of late. So while we see that, even school kids wear wrist threads that are markers of caste, and that is very disheartening. So we see the relevance of Periyar in spaces like this, in discourses, in public discourse, and that's why that is very heartening. Is there fading in memory with respect to his principles and what he stood for in the memory of public, even in Tamil Nadu itself? I hope that is not the case. But
This question is not mine. Dr. Soma Ilangovan from Washington, United States of America. I'm sorry, not Washington. He is actually president of, Chicago, not even Chicago, president of International USA. Let me get back to the question. He says the casteism and RSS has infiltrated internationally and more so in the United States of America. How can we combat that? Thank you.
So I'll just give very brief answer. So because I guess I'm the more eager than anyone else to hear you. So yeah. How to combat the presence of infiltration of the RSS and casteism in America? I would say that Periyar in the US should build broad coalitions, right? As in, you can take the examples of some Dalit activist groups over there who build broad coalitions with black communities and black activists. I think Periyar should take an even more leading role because we are the original black shirt movement. So, in a sense, if not only Black Lives Matter, we can very well be in solidarity with the Black Power movement as well in the US. Okay, and regarding the caste threats, incidentally, just a few days back, I had given a comment to Scroll on the practice of wearing caste threats. See, I would say that now with social media, certain forms of casteism and caste aggression are being visualized and to some extent amplified. But I would say this comes not out of confidence for many of these groups, but out of a crisis that they cannot be like how they were in the past. Okay, I would say that Tamil Nadu is undergoing a major change, especially in areas where there is a transition from agrarian to a more industrial form of living. And this is bound to create certain forms of social conflict and social violence. And I would say that this probably needs a more detailed analysis of political economy and socio-economic transition. If you want any reference literature, Professor Jairanjan over here. So he is the expert.
Before asking Kanimozhi to deliver keynote address, one more question. Yes, please, there.
I just want a brief evaluation on what was being discussed by all of us over here. I think one major element of the discussion was that there hasn't been a moment of reckoning like in the 90s that happened for Ambedkarite scholarship in India. My question is, how do we as academicians or people engaged in studying Dravidian movement or as Tamil Academy as a whole, have we missed the bus in trying to come up with some something like that for Periyar? And how do we evaluate ourselves today now that we are confronting bigger dangers out there? So is this project as rigorous as we expect it to be? Do we still find chances to pick up on the prism of Periyar and move into further projects like Periyarist LGBT movement or Periyarist further within the space of academia first before we breach further into the political and social sphere? Thank you.
Okay. So again, I'll again give a very brief sort of an answer. So in a sense, we can, very broadly, I will say, we can map out three phases of academic activity or interventions as regards Periyar and the Dravidian movement. One was foreign scholars writing about us. Okay. Then Tamil scholars defending Periyar and the Dravidian movement in Delhi and within Indian centers, maybe in Kolkata, Delhi, and from within Chennai, in certain academic centers. But now I say that we have the initiative and we have the advantage that we are no longer defending or no longer are we waiting for others to write about us. We are writing in international forums, right? So our books are being published by not just nationally, but internationally acknowledged presses. Orient Black Swan, Cambridge University Press, OUP, Princeton, you name it, we are there, right? Likewise, international journals, we are there. We no longer depend on national journals to give us validation or national newspapers to give us validation. So like I said, the importance of Periyar and the Dravidian movement has been amplified. But that does not mean that we be lax. The point of taking the initiative is that we have to maintain the momentum. And I think we can definitely do that.
Karthick, we would like to have one question from the Zoom. It's from Divya. Divya, please go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, am I audible?
You are audible.
Okay. So this is regarding the question that was about why Periyar is not as acceptable as Ambedkar. So, sir, I have a kind of an opinion on it. In terms of, there has been a wider socio-political projection of Periyar as anti-Hindu or as anti-Brahmin. So there has been a misunderstanding in terms of reading his thoughts as anti-religion and anti-God. So when Periyar talks about anti-God or anti-religion, he does not only talk about a particular religion or a particular cause or a particular God. So he is equally criticizing God of all the other religions and religious principles of all the other religions. So, but what has the socially hegemonic and dominant caste have done is to project Periyar as anti-Hindu and anti-Brahmin and not read him as a thinker who was against any religious or godly principles which was unequal and irrational in nature. That has been one reason why Periyar has been very misread and misinterpreted and very wrongly propagated. Secondly, I like the way how Dr. Karthick has written about Periyar as an atheist. I don't see a problem with projecting Periyar as an atheist, because by seeing Periyar as an atheist, here we are not being that he's against a religion or a god. we should see atheism as a broader kind of a rational reading of social, political, and economic structures that Periyar was critical about. So he was emphasizing more on reason and rationalism, and he was not by atheism. It was more about rationalism. It was not this anti-religion or anti-God towards a particular, but towards particular anti-Hindu or anti-Brahmanical perspective. So we should read Periyar in a much broader way, and that is what I think Dr. Karthick tried to bring in his work. So that is how we should look into Periyar. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there are comments. So thank you very much for your comments. Thank you.
Okay, now I will move to the keynote address.
Vanakkam. I thank Sundar for inviting me here, and it's a pleasure listening to Panneer, Meena, and Karthick. And like many of the audience, thanked him for writing this book. I really would like to appreciate him and thank him for bringing out this brilliant piece of work. And I would also thank him for one more reason, is just not that it's given me a great pleasure to read it, and the amount of research and work which has gone into it and the importance of it in today's world. It also makes life easier because we've never had good works on Periyar in English or in other languages. And so when I talk about Periyar to my friends in Delhi, when people ask me for a book or some material to read, sometimes you're embarrassed to give the translations because, they're really bad. So when you have a brilliant book like this, you can always give it with pride. So I thank you once again for that. And when we talk about Periyar, I really like the title of this book, A Study in Political Atheism, because we are trying to shy away from the fact that he was an atheist. Yes, he was not just an atheist. He did not say, ban religion, move out of religion, destroy religion, and, break away from the concept of God and do away with it. He was much more than that. And as when Karthick was speaking, he said, you can fit him into everything. I think as a feminist, and of course, many people are embarrassed to call themselves feminist. I'm a very proud feminist. I've never come across a person who spoke feminism so strongly and without any hesitation, without holding back the way Periyar did. And I think it holds good to anything he spoke about. He was a true iconoclast, like the film Vilasni has made, Icon and the Iconoclast. I mean, he was a true iconoclast in every sense of the word. Like the state, he did not, hesitate to question the state or whatever, anything you believed in. It was a true scientific temper which he had, which did not hesitate. And people found it very difficult. Like once again, quoting Karthi when he was speaking, he said it's very difficult to handle. You can be a Periyarist, but you have to evolve, to accept him. How I looked at him 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I started off in my 20s, there were questions which I could not accept. And of course, he always allowed you. He did not say, believe in whatever I said. He said, you don't have to differ with me, argue with me. That is what Periyar was. So But to understand and handle him in totality and accept him, I think it takes time and a lot of debate with Periyar himself and his works, his ideology. And today, when you talk about Periyar, I think there is nothing that will hold back Periyar. Today, if you talk about anything modern, anything which is breaking the glass ceiling of any community, and when you talk about discussion and debate about anything, I think Periyar was prepared for everything. There is nothing that he would shy away from. There's nothing, because he did not have the need to shy away from anything. He spoke what he believed in, and he said, do not, I mean, a person who truly believed in asking questions, a person who truly believed in seeking answers, and he did not want to give you the answers. He was always, we know about his friendships with the religious leaders. He did not hesitate to have a discussion. He did not, condemn you because you differed. But today, that is what the world is seeing. If you have a different opinion, if you want to debate with me, then I will cast you away. I will name you something and push you aside. That is where we're going towards. But Periyar never had, because he was so confident in what he believed in, that he never had this need to shy away from debate. He always, encouraged debate, and he did not shy away from debating with people. Like Jayagandhan, I think most of you know this, when he came to Trichy for a DK conference, and he was criticizing everything which Periyar spoke about, which DK stood for, and the entire philosophy and ideology on stage with Periyar and in a DK conference. But Periyar did not say stop him. People were getting very angry, the way Jayagandhan was speaking. But Periyar had the magnanimity to say that we criticize people in harsher words. I think it is our duty to listen to him and then answer that. So that is what creates a healthy democracy. That is what creates a political scenario, politics, which gives space for everybody and which questions everything and takes us to a better, healthier society. But today, I think many countries across the world is moving away from that space, that debate, that democracy, and that questioning. No government, no state, no political party wants to give that space or to be questioned, to be criticized, to be, if you support somebody, they want an entire support. They want to completely you stand by them. That is the kind of society we are looking at. That is the kind of politics we are moving towards. And this totalitarianism, of politics or ideology, which cannot change, will definitely lead us to where we do not want to go. And today, that is where we are going towards. So that, in this context, Periyar becomes very, very, very important. He did not, there's a lot of criticism about Periyar. I am very happy that this book addresses about his support to Islam. A lot of critics ask you this question, if you say Periyar is an atheist, and if you call yourself a feminist, how do you support Periyar, and how do you accept the fact that he said, convert to Islam? For Periyar, everything was a debate. Everything was, at that moment, at that context, what was right. And then he had the courage to differ from his own self. People say, you talk about language, how much you people love language. Periyar said Tamil oru kaatumirandi mozhi. How do you accept somebody who said something like that? But there is truth in what he said. He wanted Tamil to go to the next level. He wanted you to go to research. He did not want, Periyar was not somebody who would be happy celebrating about your Sangam poetry, about Silappadigaram. He definitely did not accept Silappadigaram. He did not want you to just stop with celebrating Tamil, how ancient it is, how beautiful it is. No. He was a person who was practical. He wanted Tamil to go to the next level. Tamiloடைய தொன்மையை மட்டும் வச்சுட்டு இன்னைக்கு கொண்டாடி கொண்டிருப்பது இல்லை பெரியாருடைய கனவு. பெரியாரோட கனவு தமிழோடைய தொடர்ச்சி. It had to go to the next generation. It had to take science. It had to take, everything the new world had to offer. Tamil had to understand that. Tamil had to imbibe that. Tamil had to share that. So that is why he said Tamil oru Kaatumirandi Mozhi, it is stopped. You cannot read science, you cannot do research in Tamil. And the same Periyar stood for the identity of Tamil, and he first went to the streets to fight against anti-Hindi agitation. So that is Periyar. He said Tamil is your identity, it is your mother tongue. So that is Periyar. We have to understand this conflict. You have to understand where he comes from. So that is, I think it's beautifully put in this book about, when he talks about Periyar, would he have accepted everything in Islam, everything in any religion? No. He's not a person who would accept anybody being humiliated, anybody being subjugated, anybody being seen as lesser. Everybody is equal. And that is true humanism which Periyar was talking about. So, and I don't think there's any one religion in this world which can claim to be a completely human religion which looks at everybody equally. So how would Periyar, a person for whom only that mattered, accept any religion in its total form as it is being presented to us? So I think the problem is, either you want to take Periyar again to a platform where you cannot debate Periyar, you cannot criticize Periyar, you cannot discuss Periyar. Or you take Periyar to a space where you call him as anti-Hindu, anti-religious, anti-national maybe today, and you just want to forget Periyar. But thank you. I should like to, somebody asked a question whether, we are forgetting Periyar. Maybe we did for a brief period. But I think we should thank our friends in the RSS and the BJP who would never let us forget Periyar. Every time you pour saffron, you insult him, I think there is a revival of Periyarism. And today, I think this book is also because of that, the interest of the entire world. I mean, why are people so scared of a man who lived so many years ago till today, and why are they trying to insult him? Why is he still so important? Why is he still so relevant? Because he is the answer to where this world and this country is going to. He says, question everything. He says, nothing is so sacred. People definitely found it very difficult. You take him for an agitation to, say that in Kerala. Over there, he is supposed to be fighting for people's rights, to be entering temples, to be walking that road where the temple is. But he goes there and he says the God doesn't have a right to be inside there. It's silent. It doesn't have the integrity to, stand by the people. So throw it. So it is difficult. It is difficult to digest a person who goes beyond what you're supposed to question. He always went one step beyond. That is why I think even today, we find it very, very difficult to digest. But still, we have integrated Periyar. When Periyar statues are being insulted, I think it is just not the atheists who go stand there to defend him. or who are there. It is the believers. Like he was talking about his grandmother. I like to talk about my mother, who is a very, very, very religious person. She would not listen to any debate like a typical religious person. But there's only, and she's not a very sentimental person either. But there's only one thing. I mean, you ask, as a daughter, you ask her for anything, she will give it to you. But there's only one thing she's not given to me, and I wanted desperately from her. That is a sari Periyar gave it to her. I've asked for it 100 times, and she will not give it to me. A devout Hindu, a religious person. Even my father could not convince her, that, it's pointless going to temples or being religious. But till today, she has that sari with her, and she says, you can take it only after me. I will not give it to you. So that is the way we understand, because we think today we are respected. Today, as women, as backward communities or low oppressed classes, today we all understand that this respect comes from the voice of Periyar. This respect, this dignity which we've got comes from the voice of Periyar. But sadly, we have not. Somewhere we thought Periyar has done his work. Periyar has finished what he started to achieve. We did not understand that it is it's a continuous process. I think in the film also they say that somebody will come and work against whatever you've done, and it will be undone. So today we are seeing it undone. So religion for many people is something to hold on to. Today people are talking about Hindu Rashtra. I have one question to ask. Okay, fine. You're going to create a Hindu Rashtra. India is going to be a Hindu country. Fine. And you create hatred and any religion for that matter. So you've established something which you start to create. So what happens after that? What happens? How do you do politics? Because everything is only for politics. It is not to establish the greatness of Hinduism, or it is not. It is for some people to take back power in their hands, which they've lost. That is what this whole entire RSS philosophy or whatever it is about that. So what happens after that? What happens? You establish the supremacy of Hinduism and the Hindus in this country. You need hatred among the Hindus. You need hatred. You need differences. You need conflict. So you are going to create conflict and problems between the people you are trying to unite today. So what will you do? You will start creating conflict. The easiest way to do it within Hinduism in India is caste. So that is what they will take into their hands again. Already they're trying to do it with language. And once our voices are raised against it and South is reacting very strongly to it, then it goes silent and again it comes back, So that's what is happening. So we should understand that this is why Periyar said, as long as religion is there, as long as a religion accepts caste system, that caste system and that religion cannot protect or cannot take us to a society which will be treating everybody on par equally. So we have to do away with whatever holds it. He was not, he said it many times. I have no issues with God. I haven't even met him. The only problem is that God stands for many things which society has to do away with. So that, and God seems to be supporting, religion seems to be supporting that. So we have to break that. So that is what his entire journey was towards. This, I think, the Dravidian movement started off talking to young people, talking to teachers, talking to students, and creating awareness about what is happening. Some of the old art speeches, when you go back and read, it's fascinating. Imagine Dravidian leaders like Anna, talking about world politics, talking about world history, talking about everything to somebody in rural Tamil Nadu, to their audience. They did not think that the people will not understand. They did not shy away from, what will be interesting, what will people clap for. No, they just wanted to, discuss. They wanted to educate. அதுதான் மாலை நேரத்து பல்கலைக்கழகங்கள்னு சொன்னது. They honestly, they believed in educating. They wanted to share. They wanted to tell you, to open up your world. So that is what I think is our duty, that today we have to go back to that work, just not as the part of the Dravidian movement or the DMK or anything. I think all of us have that duty. I think books like this and discussions like this, from around the world, coming back to India with recognition, with the stamp of scholars around the world, makes a very important, it brings back so much to us when you bring back books like this. And apart from that, I think we have to continue our work, talking to people here, young people, students, because we cannot, because who you're working against is very hard working. You can see the amount of work which is being put in there. It is not somebody simple you're working against. And just not in India, all over the world, you can see this kind of work happening. So I think we have to go back to our roots, go back to our people, go back and start educating, start saying that people have a right to differ, to debate, to ask questions and make their own decisions. And I always have this, it's a question I have. Is religion as personal as we think it is? We always say that, religion is personal. Do we let religion to be personal? And can religion really be personal? No. Because what I believe in becomes what my family believes in, what my next generation believes in, what I expect the neighbors to believe in. Because I want harmony. I want the comfort of living among people who believe in whatever I believe in and who look at life the way I want to look at life. So can religion really be something personal? And I think Periyar did not believe that religion can be something really personal and completely personal. And I think that is why he said we have to do away with religion. So, and once again, thank all of you for being here, and Sundar, and thank Karthick, and a lot of young scholars who are working on what Dravidian politics stands for, what Tamil Nadu stands for, what our ideology is, and especially taking Periyar to the world and trying to create this change and trying to create a healthier society intellectually. I really thank you for this, and thank you for the wonderful book, and thank you.
Thank you very much for the lovely keynote address and all the deliberations, discussions about the book this evening. And I would like to call upon Vilasini over here, who made this wonderful film, Icon and Iconoclast. And I request Ms. Kanimozhi to give a small memento to her. So thank you once again. And I'd like to also say the next Readers Hub program will be on the 10th of this month, which we have taken up Peggy Mohan's Wanderers, Kings, Merchants, the story of India through its languages. In the Reading Hub, we are taking books that are evidence-based books. So I request all of you to come and join physically. If it's not possible, join us over Zoom. Thank you one and all. Have a nice evening.